ජීවිතේ.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukutali.
And a very good evening to you. This is Newsline Live. My guest this evening is a young politician from Sri Lanka's south, one time head of the Weligama Urban Council, and now a full-time people's representative, a politician. He's of course none other than Rehan Jayawickrama. Very good evening, Rehan. Thank you for coming to Newsline, and thank you for dressing up so smartly.
Thank you for us. Thank you.
Thank you. We all know the story why. But anyway, now then, you're young. You have a whole lifetime ahead of you in politics. The people of Sri Lanka have so many things that they'll keep you busy for your lifetime. The poverty levels are extortionately high. You know, the level is very high. The cost of living and all that business. There are several challenges, and most of it revolves around the fact that Sri Lanka has little, if nothing at all, in terms of foreign exchange reserves. Foreign exchange. That's on the one side. Then when you talk to the IMF and to ADB and so on, the one thing that comes up the whole time is the level of corruption in this country. Does that worry you as a budding politician? You're obviously seeking to represent your constituency in the Parliament of Sri Lanka. Does it bother you?
It bothers me on a different note, because whenever the UN or the US or all these major countries, whenever representatives of theirs actually come into the country, and when they talk about mechanisms that we need to improve on, one thing that they talk about is, like you said, corruption and how we need to curb corruption. But I think when you talk about that, one of the first things that people need to understand is that there needs to be a mechanism for local campaign financing laws or campaign donations. Now when you look at countries like Singapore, who've gained independence as well, who are now fledgling countries with fledgling economies, when you look at their mechanisms, they also have campaign finance laws in place. So I think when a candidate is going in for a major election, and when you're accepting donations from certain, I would say, conglomerates, or from certain businessmen who have vested interest with projects going on in the state, for example. I'm not going to mention names, but I think politicians the money that's given to them should be accounted for.
So it should be should be white money.
Should be white money. Now, for example, if company A were to give candidate A some money, I think that particular company should be able to show it in their tax returns at one point, where they say, okay, 5 million rupees was given to, for example, Rehan Jayawickrama of the SJB. That way there is no corruption from my end, because even the US has something called lobbying, right? But it's legal. They have to show where they get the money.
It's all transparent.
Yes, it is. And
you, in turn, as a politician, you'll be able to account for it in your campaign funds and say, I got 500 from this person, 100 rupees from someone else, and whatever. And this is what I've spent it on.
Yes, especially when it comes to, but there are certain times for us now, for example, when you when you're out of the election and when you want people to donate for a charitable cause. For example, someone's house is broken down, they request for help. People who want to help out, what I do when I get that opportunity is I post it directly on Twitter, because I think Twitter is a powerful tool. Twitter has a lot of powerful people on it. And I say, look, this person is going through this hardship, whoever wants to help, please help. Then they deal with that person directly, right? But then when it comes to an election, it's a national campaign. And then you got to ask yourself, why would a business entity want to give you money for something of national interest? So there are lots of businessmen, I think, who don't really show it on their tax returns. And if it starts there, That's where it actually starts from. That's where corruption should be curbed.
By having some mechanism like, as you quite rightly say, in Singapore, the Political Donations Act is the one in Singapore.
Yes.
It tells you who can, who can't, especially, foreigners can't, for example, over there. So if it's a company, it has to be wholly or in majority Singaporean owned or Singaporean controlled.
Yeah.
And so these are all very good checks and balances. But in Sri Lanka, unfortunately, we don't have that. We've had, Samantha Power, who came here and given us some aid, humanitarian aid, and so on. And when the IMF, when you look at their general requirements, again, they remain concerned about the level of corruption. And obviously, the World Bank, IMF, ADB, all these big lenders, they will know, pretty much have an excellent idea of the level of corruption that goes on. Because there are international norms. You can't say, Sri Lanka is very special. That's why we spent 10 times more than the average on building the Southern Expressway, or 20 times more when we are building the Kandy Highway. You simply can't say that because all these international people, these are not the first projects they're lending money to.
I'll give you a good example, which is the Airbus deal.
Yes.
Now, when you look at the infamous Airbus deal, it was tried in a court in England.
Yes.
And they actually dug to the ground bottom of it, and they found that there had been some irregularities when paying commissions. Now, that was said in a court in England. But what has happened here with regard to that case? Nothing. The perpetrators have not been brought to book. The perpetrators seem to know how to evade certain legal framework which is already in place in Sri Lanka. Now, when you look at that case, you realize that even if a respected legal entity like what you get in England, if they found out something like this, it was our duty to pursue it further.
Yes, to take the baton and run.
But because of the fact that we have so many mechanisms to get away from all this in our country, people seem to get away from whatever financial misappropriation act they commit. So that shouldn't be the case. And also, when you speak about campaign financing laws, if you can just give me a second, I just think it shouldn't be just campaign financing laws or campaign donation laws. There should also be a cap on how much, for example, in a general election, how much each candidate can spend.
Absolutely, it makes it more equitable then.
Yes, because it doesn't make sense for one person. Or for example, a person in a certain district would spend something like 10 million, and you'll get the person coming first who would spend 100 million plus. So now that is not just 100 million rupees. You have to understand what comes with that 100 million rupees. It's multiple vehicles to run around different electorates in your district. It is a massive poster campaign that you yourself cannot afford. So that's like basically running a 100-meter race and telling the guy who's going to come first place that he can already run 50 meters and you can join him at once he's finished the 50 meters. So you're obviously going to be second, third, or fourth, or fifth. Right?
Yes, that's an excellent idea. Do you all have these sort of discussions at the SJB?
I think at the SJB there have been multiple forums this has been spoken about. The SJB youth group, in which I'm one of the chairman, we have spoken about this on multiple times. I know for a fact that Sajid Premadasa, the leader of the SJB, is very keen on implementing some of these laws. But
and he has been, to his credit. I remember interviewing him several years before for a newspaper, for the Sunday Leader, which is now no more. But at that time, he did say that he was committed to laws governing electoral funding.
Absolutely. And unless we get these things going, and unless we as politicians realize that system change also has to happen from us and not just the people. I mean, I always say that the people have to be the first cornerstone or the first stepping stone for system change.
Yeah.
But I think that politicians also have to do their part. But the people in return have to elect people that they know won't be corrupt, that they know will be transparent, Now, for example, I can give you one example. When I was the chairman of the Waligama UC, I think you very well know that corruption usually starts at the ground level. And the urban council and the Pradeshi Sabhas and the provincial councils are a hotspot for corruption.
Yeah.
But there has been not even one allegation against me.
Right.
Now, all these other people have allegations now.
Yeah.
I'm saying I don't even have one allegations against corruption. That I have taken money for passing plans, or I have taken money out of public funds, or I have put my own contractors to do jobs, or I have taken money of development funds, even though at a certain point, the former finance minister, late Mangala Samaravira, used to give a lot of money for Waligama development. And there was not a cent that was misappropriated. There was not even a cent. So, I have set an example on the ground. And that is obviously how it will be, even if I become a member of parliament, even if I become a minister, even if I become a prime minister, even if I become...
You're being very modest. What you really want to say is not if you become, but when you become.
Hopefully. That's any politician's dream. If you ask any politician where they want to go, it will be to say that they want to go right to the top. But what I'm saying is, I have set an example at the bottom. But at the same time, there has to be, now for example, the Elections Commission has told each candidate to declare their assets. Now, there was a very recent incident, I'm again not going to mention names, where me, along with the national organizer of the SJB Youth, and also another working committee member of the SJB Youth, and a district organizer as well, we actually went to the Bribery Commission, and we filed an RTI to find out how much that particular person that we were interested in, knowing how much she had, we filed an RTI for asset declaration. It took us 2 weeks for the Elections Commission to tell us that they needed another further 2 weeks. And after a month or so, they gave us another letter to the RTI with regard to the RTI that they can't provide us these details.
Because
they said that it contains sensitive information and they can't submit it. Now our next option would have been to file an appeal in the Court of Appeal. But that again would have been from our own funds. That again would have been something that we would have had to go to courts for. And I'm saying, why is all that in place? Then why is the Elections Commission asking candidates to give the asset declaration if the general public can't look at those asset declarations?
Absolutely.
And that happened to us. And that happened to us. So all that needs to change. There has to be a strict framework in place where the Elections Commission should be empowered.
So, do you think in the end, at the end of the day, Rehan, that the SJB are reluctant to heed the call of the President to form a national government, to come and join him and to accept positions? Is this why?
No, I always tell people who argue with me on this point, when they ask me this question, whether to join the President or not, I always ask them, are you kidding me? Because look at what is happening now. Look at the ministers that are being appointed now. Some of them are convicted felons, right? And they are not just getting normal ministries, they are getting high-end, high-capacity ministries.
With big budgets.
With big budgets. And their argument, when you ask them now why they are accepting all these ministries, they say, oh, it's because the SJB didn't join us. And it's because the JVP didn't join us. It's because the TNA didn't join us for this multi-party government. But how can we morally and ethically, for the sake of the country, that's what the naysayers say, the sake of the country, how do we enter a team like that, which is already corrupt, which is tainted with absolute corruption and absolute misdoings? There are people charged with murder. There are people charged with extortion. There are plenty of people with court cases who are now being appointed. So are you telling me that if Sajith Premadasa went and made these appointments, that would have technically been the end of the SJB? Now, the President doesn't have that risk because the President has a party which has got completely annihilated the elections, which has got 0 seats, where he himself has come in through a bonus seat or a national list seat.
Yes.
He can afford to do that. But we as a major political entity, we are talking about the SJB being different. We are talking about the SJB being morally upright. We are talking about having a different set of ethics. So how would you want Sajid Premadasa to smile or even give out a letter from his hand to convicted felons and to a number like 38? I mean, if they are so interested about fixing this country, why is it that the Pohottua haven't said, look, President, Mr. President, we don't need 38 ministries, give us 15. Now what we heard is there are 38 state ministries. There is going to be probably 10 more cabinet portfolios that are going to be filled. And there is also going to be deputy ministers. And think about the expenditure that all of these ministers need. One backup vehicle, bunch of security, phone bills that are paid for, somewhat of allowance that they are given on foreign trips. Now all that is going on while the IMF has already signed a staff level agreement. But the way the staff level agreement was signed, it's been portrayed by the government that the IMF money is already coming in. No, the IMF money has not come in. Even a cent of the IMF money has not come in. But what they're requiring us to do is they want us to curtail our expenditure. So how can we curtail our expenditure when we are paying exorbitant amounts of money to maintain ministers?
It's what you say is actually absolutely spot on, because back in 2015, the then Prime Minister and I suppose the then President too, Maithripala Sirisena, and the unlikely combination of a President who is sort of left of centre socialist and the Prime Minister who wastes no time in espousing the several benefits of neoliberalism. Yet they said that there is no space for defeated candidates, that they won't be brought in through the back door. But today, I put it to you, Rehan Jayawickrama, that our President has sort of fallen foul of the very things that he himself said back in 2015.
That being said, you obviously know, and the people watching this know, how many people were taken in from the national list on that election itself. When you talk about 2015, when he won with the former president, if you remember correctly, there were about 7 or 8 or 9 SLFP MPs who lost their election. All of them were taken through the national list.
Correct.
But then it's not only the national list that they've taken their word back on. When you look at the UNHRC, you have to think that Mangala Samaraweera, the late Mangala Samaraweera, co-sponsored a resolution at the UNHRC. That was a co-sponsored resolution. But why is it that the president, who is the executive of the country at the moment, why did Sri Lanka not opt for a sponsored or co-resolution now? We completely went gung-ho. We said that we are not agreeable to an international mechanism. We said that we don't need, that our accountability process will be our own. And we completely washed our hands of what's happening at UNHRC right now. But there's a limit. There's a limit that the UNHRC will tolerate all this. There's a limit that funding agencies like the IMF will turn a blind eye to all this. And you have to also see what the EU said today. The EU released a statement. The EU said that the PETA should be suspended for further interest of Sri Lanka.
On that note, let's go for a quick break and look at this evening's headline news, and we'll see you on the other side of the break, shall we?
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Anka ege arakshita iti gini petti. Surya gini petti.
A rare bat first win in Dubai and Sri Lanka's remarkable comeback.
Legends go Sri Lanka.
51st UNHRC sessions underway. Damita Abeyratne granted bail. Artists stand up against suppression.
මේ දමිතා වගේ කෙනෙක් ඒගොල්ලන්ට විවේචනය කරන දරා ගන්න බැරි නම් දේශපාලනෙන් අයින් වෙන්න මොන වගේ බයගුල්ලෝද උඹලා?
Lotus Tower to open to the public tomorrow.
News First headlines. Main sponsor.
Anka ege araksita itigini petti. Surya gini petti.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with Rehan Jayawickrama from the SJB. In fact, he's the leader of the Youth Front.
Vice Chairman.
Vice Chairman.
Don't get me in trouble now.
I won't get you in trouble. Sajid Premadasa will forgive my ignorance on this matter. But thank you. Now then, we were talking about the United Nations and so on. And I want to tell you that a couple of weeks ago I went to the Vanni. I got off this wonderful train that goes all the way to Kankasanture and got off at Kilinochi. I must tell you that from Vavonia upwards, the stations are all very, very new, and it's excellent. The line's excellent, the train service is very good. But when we got off at Kilinochi and we went into the former no-fire zones and the scene of the battles and so on, what struck me was, although the no-fire zones were returning to lush green and indicated to me that the land's quite arable over there, the level of poverty, the lack of opportunity was stark. The Vanni must be the one area, the one district in this country that is terribly, terribly and terribly underprivileged. The war has certainly been won. There's a huge military presence there, and the people seem to be living under this near fear psychosis, but no opportunity. The water in some of those areas is sort of not suitable for drinking or for farming, for that matter. Nobody seems to have gone out there and taken a sample to find out why. The beaches were absolutely pristine, very gentle breeze, and what we found on the ground there, because it's still not properly cleared, we found old photo albums. You know, people rushed during this whole move into this no-fire zone or to the second or the third. They grab what they can, but they also grab their memories in terms of the albums. And now there's no one else to turn the pages of those albums, long sort of faded, excepting the winds. I call this land there Sri Lanka's fields of shame. It has to be. All this talk at the United Nations and so on, there is no commitment on the part of this government to get on with it, pay the people the reparations if they have to, and also to address, to allow these people, if they so wish, to have some closure. What would you, as a budding politician aiming to represent your people in Parliament, do?
There is a big difference between pseudo-patriotism and actual patriotism. If you really love your country, you would want your country to move forward, and you would understand the international ramifications that have been coming, blasting on our doors every single time we have promised the international community and we have not done something. We always have things similar to sanctions hitting us. And there was also the suspension of the GSP at one point. If you remember correctly, when Mangala was alive and when he was pushing for reconciliation, when he was pushing for this to happen, for certain mechanisms to take place, people are laughing at him. People called him unpatriotic. That man had to die for Sri Lankans to realize that what he was saying is correct, and that's a major weakness that most Sri Lankans have. They don't see the good in the character once while they're alive. They only notice it while they're gone. So I think that there is no point denying that there was no war crimes when there was no fact-based, evidence-based program that was in place. And you're blaming the government now, but I blame successive governments. In 2010, the former president, Mahinda Rajapaksa, he himself, they appointed the, I think, the Parana Vitana Commission.
The Paranagama.
The Paranagama, right? The Paranagama Commission, yes. So they appointed that. There was lots of evidence that was gathered. And I was actually speaking to a Twitter on Twitter with Ambika, who's a prominent activist and also the former chairman of the Human Rights Commission. And when I suggested on that platform that there should be a proper mechanism in place, she enlightened me, because she's been involved in all this. She enlightened me that there have been various investigations in place, but nothing's been done about it. And when you take these witnesses and when you bring them, it's torture for them to actually speak about what they went through.
Again and again.
Again and again.
Yeah.
Happened in 2010, happened in 2015. So there has to be a, and we had that opportunity in 2010 when the UNHRC gave room for our own commission. They never wanted international inquiries. They wanted us to get to the bottom of it. And what we should have used amidst all its criticism was the South African model of a lessons learned and reconciliation committee. There were certain criticisms about the way it was handled, but then for the greater good, look at where South Africa is now in terms of
Unity
the communal
and reconciliation.
reconciliation, and look at where we are. And like you rightly said, if Vanni was the place that the final battle happened, shouldn't Vanni be the place that should be the most developed in Sri Lanka? Shouldn't Vanni be one of the most beautiful places that you can visit now? But no, like you who visited Vanni, you yourself realized that Vanni is not a dream paradise anymore, and that Vanni is full of bad dreams that are still in existence. So how do we canvas for international support? Now when you talk about, there are people who say that we shouldn't even go to the IMF in 2020. But isn't a majority of Sri Lankans now saying that we should have gone to the IMF? They are. But why do we as a country have to wait for things to get this bad? Why don't we understand the very little support that we have coming in is based on the international community still believing that we need this particular investigation to happen. And now we have run out of the opportunities to have a local mechanism, and the international community is now pressing for an international sort of intervene, for the international community to intervene and have an investigation. They didn't really say that. I haven't seen the resolution yet, but that's what it will come to. And eventually, and with that, and a gun-ho attitude of, look, we're not going to accept this, is going to come sanctions. It's going to put a halt to the GSP. Now, can we as a country afford this right now? So I think with the IMF negotiations that are going on at the moment, this is the best time, because the government anyway has to make unpopular decisions. And the president, Mr. Wickremesinghe, he said we shouldn't call him Excellency, so which is why, no disrespect to him, I'm calling him Mr. Wickremesinghe or President Wickremesinghe. He said that he has to make some unpopular decisions. So start off by establishing a credible, facts-based, evidence-based mechanism that will toe the line with the international community. Why not start there? Because if he has to make all these unpopular decisions now, my advice to the government is make them now. Make them now. Do it along the lines of what the IMF also require when it comes to tax increases and all that. Do it right now. Because the more we isolate the minority community, and these are our brothers, these are our sisters, these are our mothers, these are our fathers. We did not fight with a foreign country. We fought with our own people. And the first step should be for them to see us as being the older brother or the older community or the community with a majority. But the only way they'll see it is if we look after them. But if we continue turning a blind eye to all this, I don't know where we're heading as a nation, and it's very scary.
Actually, what you said is perfectly true and very, very powerful. I actually thought that when you started saying that President Wickremesinghe must do the right thing and make those harsh decisions, I really thought for a moment that you were going to say that he should start by not appointing those 37 people.
That's already done. He's already done it.
Yes. Should he? Do you think he'll call this? We've only got 30 seconds. Do you think he'll call elections in February?
He has to. He must. Otherwise, there's going to be another revolt. There's going to be people on the streets. It's going to get even worse.
Rehan Jayawickrama, thank you very much for being on Newsline. We've run out of time.
Thank you,
but that's the way it was. And it's now time for the primetime news. Take care, have a great evening, and as always, God bless you all.